Welcome to the Essential Ingredient in Paran, and this is our third video of our pastry series. Today I'm going to show you how to make a strudel dough to make the classic apple strudel. So to start the strudel dough, I've got 200 grams of plain flour, a pinch of salt, 55 grams of melted butter so it's still warm, and 80 mils of warm water. So we're going to mix all that together for about a minute to make a nice soft elastic dough. Okay, so that's been a minute, and what we have here is a nice soft dough which we're going to allow to rest for 30 minutes. We're going to leave it in the bowl. We're going to cover it with glad wrap, and we're going to put it in a warm spot because we don't want this to go cold. So it's really important this doesn't go in the fridge. You can put it near the oven or somewhere nice and warm. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to roll out our dough. This is the really important part of making a strudel. So we're going to roll it out on a tea towel because it needs to be really thin. The tea towel stops everything from sticking, and it's just easy to work with the dough. So I'm going to flour my tea towel. As you can see, the dough is really silky and soft still. So what we want to do is roll it out first a little bit. And then we're going to stretch it. So this is all part of the technique for strudel pastry. So we roll it out as thin as we can first. If you need to put more flour underneath, you can, but you don't want to add too much because you don't want to dry out your pastry. So the stretching of the pastry is a technique that obviously takes a little bit of practice. So if you've got a tea towel that has a pattern on it, then you just want to roll out your pastry so that you can sort of see the pattern through the pastry. So what I'm going to start doing now is stretching it. So you take your fingers underneath the pastry and just gently pull it out, and that will stretch the dough. This takes a little bit of time. You don't want to rush it, otherwise you'll tear your pastry. And then that can become a little bit frustrating. I'm just going to pop a little bit of butter on it as well, because that also keeps it a little bit wet and easier to work with. So we'll brush a little bit of melted butter over it. Okay, so as you can see, this is quite thin underneath. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to start assembling it. But before we do, I'll show you here. I've got 4 apples, green apples, that are raw and just roughly sliced. I have 50 grams of currants, 2 tablespoons of rum, a tablespoon of lemon juice, the zest of 1 lemon, half a cup of caster sugar, a teaspoon of vanilla powder and a 1/4 teaspoon of ground allspice. So you want to prepare these about half an hour before, just to give time for the apples to marinate. And then you can see all the juice that seeps out. We're not going to put that in the strudel because obviously it'll go soggy. So you just need time to allow for that to happen. Okay, now I'm going to brush the base with some melted butter. And then I'm going to sprinkle some almond meal on the bottom. So this adds to that strudel texture. When we talk about strudel, or when you make it like a streusel slice, it's that crumbly almond breadcrumb texture that's underneath. Okay. I'm going to spoon my apples, and we're just going to pop them on the top here, using a slotted spoon, just so that you don't transfer too much of that liquid. So you want to leave a little bit of a gap because we're going to need to roll this up. We're going to fold it up a little bit like an envelope. So now what we do is we take one side and bring it up. And we want to fold that there. And the other side, we're going to bring that up and over as well. And I'm going to brush that with a little bit of butter. So the butter also creates that flakiness in your pastry. Makes it nice and crisp. Then we take this top bit and that gets folded over. And then we're using your tea towel. You're just going to fold it over, and that will help. As you can see, it's rolling over. Pop a little bit more butter on this. And then fold it over again. And just a little bit more butter just to help the pastry stick to the bottom. And then I'm going to transfer it to a baking tray. So just very carefully lift it up, transfer it onto our baking dish, and brush it with some butter. Now I'm going to bake this in the oven for 50 minutes at 180 degrees. But every 20 minutes I'm going to take it out, I'm going to brush it with butter again, and then pop it back in the oven. Okay, so the strudel's come out of the oven. We've just let that rest for a few minutes so it's not so hot, and I'm just going to lift it onto my board and slide it off. I'm going to dust it with some icing sugar so you can hear that it's nice and crispy. And then you just serve it hot. And there we go. Beautiful apple strudel.